Uh, Do they, with the work labor and stuff like that, has your equivalent of like our children's services not got involved and gone in and done and investigated?
Yes, they have many times.
And they're not removing children at all? They're
They
just
tried once. They did once, like a decade ago, and Gloriavale kicked up a stink, and the kids were returned. And now, like everybody knows what was going on in that home. Has been some justice, but it has been the biggest question: why hasn't anyone really done anything?
yeah.
The- And so, after the big explosion of abuse revelation in 2020, the police did our child services, labour inspectorate, a whole lot of multi-agency government efforts went in. But honestly, you can only oversee a group like Gloriavale so far. You're not really getting the true story by sitting there having meetings with the leaders.
Exactly. You
You get true story when you talk to people who are in there thinking of leaving, and after they leave, then come the true stories. So we are privy to those.
those and I guess the proof too, right? Because everyone's gonna be on their best behavior when an authority comes in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So up until now, they've had a private school. And for 4 years, we've been red flag, like, hello, most of their teachers aren't registered. Like, this is what's going on in the school. And it's been 4 years of investigations. And we should find out before Christmas whether the school is deregistered. And it was a private school, which meant the government couldn't go in as quickly as they do with, say, if it was a state school, they would have put a commissioner in the next week. But they felt quite powerless. Like the New Zealand government had never deregistered a private school before, ever. And neither had they ever deregistered a charity for being oppressive and controlling. So these are like landmark um, government actions which are occurring currently. We'll find out hopefully before Christmas whether they lose their charitable status too. But leavers have been fighting for 10 years that they were stripped of their status. It's a long time with a lot of crime to have your charitable status removed. So it's been really slow. I think New Zealanders, Kiwis, government didn't know what to do. Honestly, it's been terrible neglect on behalf of the government.
It
Mm.
sounds like it, and it just so explain to me what will happen with the school if they decide that they lose their designation as a private school.
So several years ago, when a lot of complaints were made from leavers, they did stand down 10 teachers, and then many got reinstated, and then some got taken through disciplinary tribunal. So they actually allowed homeschooling, which had never been allowed in the past because it would be too individual. This is a very tight cult that says unity is the key. And so they didn't want people doing homeschooling because who was going to do the homeschooling? Mum? But mum's working. Mum's working in the daycare centre, or she's working on, domestic chores. So it really broke down the community in some ways. So some are homeschooling. Some of those people have left because it actually gave them an opportunity to spend time with their children and realize that maybe this life isn't, what we were promised. So on the closure of the school, they will attempt to go homeschooling, but we've had some reasonably serious words to the Ministry of Education, and so have leavers, that have said that is not the answer. You should not be giving exemptions to people who live in a tiny room that's not a safe place, because there's still predation occurring in Gloriavale, of course. You can't stamp it out that quickly. They don't have access to their own vehicles. They don't have free access, easy access, where you can just choose to take your children to the local zoo or the river. They don't have access to their own finances. It's a communal community. You have to go to the leader and ask to buy your educational resources. And they don't have autonomy as a family unit. And the mother possibly left school at 15 as well, and went through the Gloriavale school. So what about that scenario would make you think it's okay to give an
Yeah.
exemption and allow homeschooling? So we've tried to come from that angle. The Ministry of Education will be designing plans. We have submitted options for them. Leavers have come up with ideas and solutions, and we're kept out of the loop, really, of what will occur. So I guess we'll hear soon. But they will literally, at the end of the day, have to be shipped off to either public schools, which are like 40k away, kilometres away, because they are, they're quite in an isolated area. But you can't just drop 120 kids or 200 children on another school. You'd absolutely blow it out of the water. Um, so it's going to have to be carefully handled, hopefully with a transition plan wrapped around with services. We'd like to see health services, social worker services, and navigators for education. And yeah, I think some people will take their leave of Gloriavale if this occurs.
Yeah.
It's been a really key pillar. If you can capture your people in an isolated area and have a private school and run your own daycares and have your own in-house education, employment, you have entrapped your people really well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when did it start? Was it in the 70s that they formed?
Yeah, late 60s, 69, around that time. He came from Australia, a lot of sort of charismatic, evangelical, like revival tent meetings and things were happening around New Zealand at that time. It also coincided with the hippie sort of movement. So a lot of the original people they recruited were actually people in their late teens who were traveling from other countries, disconnected from their family unit. So that's a great person to capture and share your dream of your vision of living together in perfect harmony, and we'll share things. But really when you've got a leader who's a narcissist and has his own deviancies and a huge desire to control, you're setting yourself up for a disaster.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, can you tell me a little bit, like a few, I know you don't want to say names and have to be very careful with this, but the escape process, like what kind of support that you provide? I know you had said that you always make sure there's a house on standby ready to go, like you can turn things around pretty quickly. Do you find a lot of emergency situations, or do you find that there's a lot of lead up to and planning before someone leaves the community?
Yeah, for the first several years, there was absolutely no warning. And so, yeah, the group we've set up is called the Gloriavale Leavers Support Trust. And we do have a website and people can go there and join our Facebook page. And so what you have with the escapes, for the first 10 years we're involved, it was literally, yeah, they were just falling out of there with half a day's notice, if that, and everything was a very quick turnaround. So one of the greatest stories was a family with 12 children. Mum was pregnant with 13, and one of the young men who was in our church and was going into Gloriavale, actually, they thought he was going to join. He ended up going weekend after weekend, and they were pretty excited that this guy was going to join them because he was a fine young man and that perhaps he would marry one of their young ladies. But he was really going in there to try and have conversations with people to help them see that their distorted view was so distorted. So he started connecting with this family and having discussions with the father and some of the older teens. And so this family was allowed to come out on you're allowed like a special day with your spouse, a couple of 2 or 3 times a year. And so they had one of their days and somehow they got a vehicle because they were dairy farming. So they had been living on the edge of Gloriavale. So they had a little bit more autonomy. They actually took off one day and the vehicle drove 3 hours to a large centre, and the ministers from our church drove up to meet them and they had a secret meeting. And at that point, like they're thinking of going. So we heard news that they were thinking of going, and my husband and I said, well, they're going to need somewhere to go. Why don't we offer them our house? We'll just put a tent up on the lawn. They can have the house and we'll just work it out from there. How's that? Great plan. Why don't we buy some shipping containers? Because, they might not come for a month or two. Like, obviously, they're thinking about going. We'll get these shipping containers, and if we need to, maybe we can go and just even crash in there. So that was a Thursday night. So we passed through this information, and they texts the husband, and he's sitting in a meeting in the Gloriavale meeting hall, and he's got a phone because he's a farm manager, but you never get cell reception on that site. And miraculously, He's sitting there next to his wife. His wife has just sort of whispered in his ear, but where would we go if we left? And the text turns up and says there's a people in Timaru for you to go to. You can land at their house. No lie. They decided, let's go like tomorrow. So we get this message on a Saturday morning. Yeah, they're actually coming today. The first half will be there at like 6 p.m. I'm working down at my craft shop. My head's spinning, and I just said, I just think I need to ring someone to come and like work in the shop today. So I rang a friend. We started getting on the phone. They needed vehicle to go do the pickup because they had more children. They were going to come out in 2 parts. They needed car seats. So we're ringing around all these people. People are dropping off things at our house. I've got photos of it. It was a great day.
I'll insert them in the video.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, we had people putting up tents on our lawn. That was for the older children to live in, and a big one for us. And we just wait. And the first tranche comes through later that night. It's mum and lots of her young ones. And the dad and the older kids stayed behind because overnight they decided that we're going to write a pamphlet, a reason why they were leaving Gloriavale, a letter, because they knew that once you leave, you get maligned. And so they wanted to write a letter about why they were going, and they did. At 2 a.m, they snuck into the school, they photocopied it off, and all of the older teens put them under the doors at like 2, 3 a.m. of the people who were sleeping. And then they jumped in a vehicle and drove on out of there. But people were getting up early for milking of cows. And so someone alerted a leader, and the leader went around pulling the letters out of the doors and going into people's dormitories saying, where is the letter? Have you read the letter? Give me the letter. So the next group arrives with dad at like 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. They've hardly slept, and all they want to do is go to church. Like they're in blue clothes, and they're just like, let's go to church. So they're landing in our home, and it just becomes bedlam. And someone from another community group finds out about it and puts a post on Facebook saying, we've heard there's this new family of 12 who's left Gloriavale. We need clothes and furniture. And we're like, oh no, this is going to go crazy. And it did. It made the newspaper. We had TV cameras trying to come in. And then we just got donated so much stuff. We had to say, whoa, thanks, but no thanks. And it was just an unbelievable time. People were coming with meals. They stayed with us 5 weeks. And in that time, needed to find them, vehicles. They looked for housing and a job. And look, we still see that family twice a week. We go to their house for midweek Bible studies. And from there, their family members started leaving, aunts, uncles, cousins. It's just crazy. And now our lives are just filled with joy. I mean, they have babies. That family now has 15 children. We get invited to all the weddings and engagements and birthdays. So it's a very full social life. It's anything, let's say. So many people. Yeah, that's a good. So that was a very unplanned escape. It happens very quickly. A lot of people, once they've decided to leave Gloriavale, they struggle to stay in there. But in the last 3 years, because of all the pressure of the court cases, Gloriavale has had to stop doing some of its disciplinary meetings in the way they were. And so 1 or 2 families have actually told Gloriavale they're going and actually packed up in daylight. But the vast majority are sneaking out at night. And young people, there's one leaving every 5 to 6 weeks at the moment for the last 2 years. So quite a regular run of them. And the teenagers will normally reach out to a friend. Gloriavale got sort of forced to have a cell phone tower last year. And so a lot of phones, illicit phones, are now in Gloriavale, and people are on Wi-Fi a bit more because they're doing like homeschooling or correspondence school. So access to technology has sort of been foisted on them.
Yeah.
And that means there's contact. So we got a call recently. We got a call, one of our stories, got a phone call from a young man who said, can you help my friend? He wants to get out. I've got to go, do my job. Here's his number. He's happy to talk to you. I said, Sure thing. That was quite new. So I just started interacting on Messenger with this young man. When do you want to leave? Today. Okay. What time? You name a place and a time. And he named a place and a time. And I said, someone will be there to collect you. So we just used our networks because we're 4 or 5 hours away. Vehicle went to the pickup point, kid jumped in, and then made his way down here where, his needs have been met, jobs, um, driver's license, all the things that a young man, a teenager would need when you've grown up in an isolated community. And so that's regular. Though we were asked to go and do a pickup ourselves recently. So yeah, we drove over, and the person wanted to be picked up outside the laundry, Gloriavale's laundry. We had to drive right onto the property, run up behind all the houses and the big hostels, and wait outside. And it was dark now, and the laundry lights were on, and the hearts are beating, and they were 15 minutes late because someone got suspicious that she was actually up to something. And so in the end, she just sort of had to run away from where she was and quickly grab her stuff, jump in the vehicle, and we drove on out. So, yeah,
What does that feel like? Like, explain to me what you're feeling at that time.
you're feeling nervous because when you drive on the property, there's some deeply oppressive thing that you feel. I'm not nervous that we're going to get caught. I'm nervous for the person. I know what it's taken for this person to get to this point where they are desperate enough to try life on the outside. That says to me they're at the mental end of what they can cope with in there, that they have determined that leaving there under threat of salvation it's worth it to have an attempt at hope to survive, because leaving cults, it's like death. It's death or death. You suffer cutting off, shunning, excommunication, the threat of it, as well as potentially, the loss of your salvation. So you're really dying in many ways. And they often cut you off like you're dead. And you're doing that, risking. You risk a lot when you leave a cult. And you're hoping that you find some hope on the outside and support. And I just think it's an immense privilege. I find it I often just say I can't believe we're involved in this. I remember the time going in with a husband who had been kicked out, and he was going to rescue his wife and children. And she had agreed that he could do that. And it was a Friday night where everyone in Gloriavale goes up and has a movie. And so she had chosen to go up, I think, and then come back and to the room, or maybe she never went up, and she packed up their room, put everything outside in bags, and then we took 2 vehicles, drove up, and the plan was to go out around alongside the hostel, grab her and the children and get them in a vehicle with her husband and drive that first vehicle away. And my husband and I and someone else would stay and pick up their stuff. And yeah, she's feeding her children out the window to me. She didn't have a door that went out to their balcony. So I'm collecting these children, and one of them saying, I don't want to go, mummy. Because the fear of it, it's crazy business.
Yeah.
To think of it. And so they leave, and then as we're filling up the vehicle, one of the leaders starts coming down the pathway. And you're just like, we're caught, we're sprung, like, what can you do? So we had a chat to them, but they were asking, what are you doing? The deeds of darkness, sneaking around. We're like, oh, actually, no, we're here by invitation, and we've got a job to do. And these people have the right to make this decision. So yeah, we talked for a bit. They didn't bother going up and alerting everyone. There was no point. The family had gone. So yeah, we do have some stories. Yeah.
Crazy. Do you have any updates on anyone that was in Escaping Utopia?
Oh, yes. Wow. I'll tell you some exciting news. Just yesterday, Escaping Utopia Part 2 was announced. And so the film crew have received funding. They've been waiting for a few months to hear whether they were going to get funding. And so they'll have cameras on the ground from, from the beginning of this next year, following up on the journey of the people who were in the original series plus others. So a very wonderful to hear that. And so look, each of the people in the Escaping Utopia have big life changes have occurred. That was a couple of years ago that the cameras sort of finished up there. So a lot happens for people who leave Gloriavale, especially in the first 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of moving locations, changing jobs, making decisions. Um, and you find that, like Boaz, his wife Tabitha didn't didn't show up on Escaping Utopia Part 1 because she'd only just come out. Very uncommon to find someone newly out who's actually willing to go in front of a camera and talk about their journey. So I guess I'm hopeful that Part 2, because we follow their journeys, we keep connected with most people who leave Gloriavale, a growing number. It's hard to. But yeah, everyone has got updates, and the good news is everyone is progressing well. They are finding out who they are more. They're getting more confident to speak out. Since Escaping Utopia, um, there have been more court cases, and some of the people who were in that documentary have participated in those cases, been witnesses, and have assisted in imprisoning more people. So CEO has written her book, and that has been published. And so she actually speaks about her sister Precious and more about her mum. It's called Unveiled, A Story of Surviving Gloriavale. It's written by Theophila Pratt. So that is the name she's going by. And that talks about, her sister, India, her own personal stories. Very, a wonderful account. In many ways, it's a bit like a history book. It's a personal memoir. Uh, but it's got quite a bit of humour in it. I do find people leaving Gloriavale have quite a sense of humour. I think it's like a survival tactic, to be honest. But also it's quite a good section on how you can support someone who's leaving. So I find it like almost like a therapy manual in many ways. It's a very, very useful book. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Is there any final thoughts or anything that you would like to add about, even just speaking to someone that now that they have Wi-Fi connections, that maybe they're going to come across this video? What would be
Mm.
something you would
I,
say?
yeah, I think we all need to realize that we all have a role to play in supporting people who we interface with, who've come out of these groups or who may still be in there. It's not a hopeless situation. Oh, they're brainwashed. I can't reach them. You can reach them. There's no one who's not able to be. Um, it's not an unreached people group. They can be reached. You can help them start thinking. It's by interfacing with them, having conversations with them, asking questions of them. Showing love and care to someone is incredible, especially, people in cults are not treated well in there. They're neglected. They don't have their love tank filled. They don't have that emotional support. And so by showing love and care, it's more powerful than you can ever imagine. And I think people in wider society need to know people who've come out of cults, they're not freaks. Many of them were born there. They Those who did join from adulthood thought they were joining something positive that was life affirming. They didn't realize they were walking into entrapment, abuse, and coercive control. They didn't. And so we need to have sympathy for people and show them love and care and respect and dignity. And so there's a lot we can do as outsiders to break down cultic influence.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure to meet you today. And wow, the work you're doing is incredible. And with your permission, I'd like to follow up with you too in another year and see where you're at and hear some more stories from you.
Please do. Thank you. And I just forgot to say that I have staff, we have a team, there's a group of people that are dedicated and working for the cause. And Leavers have lawyers who do a lot of pro bono work. And it really has grown into a very unexpected team, a grassroots movement that's just having such an impact on lives. So thank you for the opportunity to share about it.